So today I'm going to share a story about how I became a digital nomad. And now I travel the world full time. And no, I'm not a YouTube creator, even though you are watching this on YouTube. You can easily probably check my subscribers and you'll see that I don't have, basically, I'm not making any money off of YouTube. I'm also not a programmer. I didn't have a job as a digital or as in anything on the computer beforehand. My degree is in kinesiology, so it really has nothing to do with anything computer oriented. But anyways, I digress. I need to start back from the beginning. So back in 2018, I had decided to leave the US for an indefinite amount of time. Now, when I left, or when I decided to leave, I had no plan. $50,000 worth of debt, 20,000 of which was credit cards, 30,000 was student loan debt, and maybe close to $3,000 in my name that I was going to live off of. And when I mean leave, I don't mean for a few months. I mean leave indefinitely. So, I really had no return date. I donated everything I owned and I threw everything into a backpack and off I went. I first started in Argentina. It was there in Argentina that I was staying at a hostel that I met a woman working there or volunteering there. Now, before this point, I've actually had done a lot of traveling, mostly for a few weeks at a time. I had done a lot of backpacking as well. So I was very experienced already in backpacking and hostel environments and yeah, and all that good stuff. So this woman and I started talking, and we were going over different ideas because at this point she was living actually in Bariloche, and she was telling me how she makes money by teaching English online through a company called Palfish. And so we started talking more. I was like, hey, tell me more about this. She said, well, you work mostly with kids. It's pretty easy. You have to have a lot of energy, but you need to get a TEFL. And I was like, oh, okay, what's a TEFL? Basically, TEFL is what you need in order to teach English outside of the US. And so basically, I went ahead. She told me more about getting a TEFL. I went ahead and got a TEFL. It took a good couple months. I remember I actually had to borrow some money at the time to pay for the course, which is a couple $100s, but it would actually end up becoming probably like the best $200 I actually spent because getting that TEFL at least allowed me to get an income. So I remember getting my TEFL. At this point, I was in Chile. I was in Santiago. Actually, I studied in a hostel, in a very, very cheap hostel for 3 weeks. But I mostly stayed there just so I can get my TEFL. And then basically from there, I went into Bolivia. And I was in Bolivia. I was in a small town called Pata. And I actually signed on Palfish and actually got my first student, which was an adult. It was a guy. Now, at the time, I didn't know, but the guy was just trying to sell me something. So my first student wasn't even really a student. It was kind of more like a sales pitch to me. But after we were done talking, I think it was like 20 minutes or something, I got a little thing that said I earned like 15 yuan. And I was like, whoa, that was the first time I actually truly earned any kind of income online. And I just remember thinking like, man, this is so cool. I was like, I got paid just to talk to someone because that's basically what we did. Actually, he did most of the talking. I did more of the listening. And then at the end of it, I was like, okay, well, I'm good. Thanks though. Anyways, so fast forward, I ended up becoming a teacher for Palfish for children, which is great because kids, you get paid more when you're teaching the kids courses. And during this time, this is like early 2019 now, I started kind of building that up. to the point where I was actually starting to do like probably 400, 500 bucks a month. The problem though is that my minimum credit card payments were about $500 a month. So I really wasn't actually getting ahead with any of these things. I was just barely paying the minimums basically. I wasn't even able to pay off any real principal. And I was like, man, I mean, it was great because at least some of the money that I had for traveling could be spent on travel and not on paying off credit cards. But because I had such a high minimum, monthly minimum, it was very, very difficult to even get ahead. So fast forward to getting to Costa Rica, and I was basically staying at a friend's house in San Ramon, teaching English. And I had met a friend of mine who was now living in Vietnam. I met him actually in the US. And I just messaged him and I said, hey, how is it in Vietnam? He was at the time living in Da Nang. And he said, why don't you come out? And so I had to actually borrow money. At this point, I was basically out of money. I had to borrow money for a one-way ticket to Asia. And I get into Da Nang, and I remember picking up my first work kind of as a kindergarten English teacher, basically working at like like a summer school kind of situation. My friend actually ended up leaving. He was there for like a week. We met up one time, and it was interesting because he was like, I got into Da Nang. He was like, yeah, let's meet up. And then we meet up, and he was kind of like, all right, well, I'm basically leaving like in a week. I'm like, oh, okay. So he decided to go back to the US. But anyways, I was there in Da Nang for a couple months, and I was doing okay. Like it was nice because I basically had two incomes coming in now. I was teaching English online, and then I was also, teaching at schools. So that was nice. Still not necessarily enough to like really move ahead and really start to make a dent in my debt and everything else. But it was nice to at least have some breathing room again, because for a minute there it was actually like it was pretty tough. But you do what you got to do. So I'm in Da Nang. I reach out to a friend of mine who I find out is living in Saigon, and I'm like, hey, how is Saigon? He said, dude, come down because you're going to have a lot more teaching opportunities down here. You're not only going to pay more, but you just have a lot more places. Saigon's a much bigger city, so yeah, you're always going to have work. And honestly, that sounded pretty good. I'm like, dang, okay, so I can live in Saigon. I'm basically guaranteed to get work. And so I said, okay, yeah, and I can live with my friend, and that's kind of what we worked out. So I moved down to Saigon. We ended up becoming roommates, and yeah, I basically started teaching. I started teaching same thing at the kindergarten level. I ended up leaving there and getting another job with a different, same kind of job, different company, because he just paid more. And yeah, so that's what I ended up doing. And honestly, like looking back at that whole experience, it was actually kind of fun. Like it's especially if you like kids, it's fun because basically you're getting paid to play with, teach kids. And so most of the time he was just really playing games. And honestly, like, yeah, the worst part about teaching, yeah, at least with kids, and I think anyone who's taught kids before watching this knows, you just get sick all the time. So I felt like every couple of weeks I was getting some kind of sickness. And of course, this was before COVID. So speaking of which, COVID would end up being the thing that changes everything, right? And so during this time, COVID had just started to spread around China. We didn't know a whole lot about the disease. Of course, no one knew how this would eventually spread all over the world. So here I am in Saigon, and this is around Tet. And I decided to go to Cambodia, to the islands. And I thought I was only going to be gone for a week. In fact, I literally remember telling my roommate, all right, man, I'll see you in a week. I thought I was going to come back, keep teaching English at the schools. I thought that was that was the plan. So I get to Cambodia. I'm on the islands. I'm there for a few days, about a week. And actually, probably I think it was like a couple weeks. But anyways, my friend reaches out to me and says, hey, they're talking about closing borders. on the Vietnamese side. And I was like, crap, okay, well, I'm not going to risk it. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take the next ferry out. I'm going to get back into the country. That's what I did. I got into the ferry. I got back to mainland. I then got to Sihanoukville is like the city that you would take to get from the mainland Cambodia to the islands. From mainland Sihanoukville, I went to the capital, Phnom Penh, where I was going to get the bus back into Vietnam. The problem, though, is by the time I got to Phnom Penh, it was too late. The border had actually closed down. And I knew foreigners who were trying to get back into Vietnam who couldn't even get back into the country. So now I'm basically stuck in Cambodia. And now I no longer have a teaching job or anything as far as, obviously being in Saigon goes. I was still teaching English online, but lightly because I had pulled back quite a bit as I was teaching in Saigon. And so, so I was like, crap, what am I going to do? So one of my friends reaches out to me, someone who I used to work with on a rehab side. So my background is basically kinesiology. I'm a certified athletic trainer. I have worked a lot in the realm of sports medicine. I'm from Los Angeles, so that's kind of what I was doing back when I was living in LA. I was actually working with a professional parkour team. And so anyways, he reaches out to me. He's like, hey, I have some shoulder stuff going on. Can you just help me with some exercises? I was like, oh yeah, sure. So I kind of built a little program, sent it to him. And then he basically comments back and he says, hey, what do I owe you for this? And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, how about this much? And that then started this working more as a real digital nomad, and kind of moving from expat, which is what I was living like before, to kind of like digital nomad now. Because then from there, he then referred one of his friends to me, who then basically ended up blowing up my whole business. And so he was able to refer other people, and then basically I started working with more and more people online, and I was able to kind of slowly build a business from there. And it was really, really nice because not only was I able to pay off my credit card payment, my credit cards in general, but I was even actually able to pay off my student loan debt as well in a short amount of time. During that time, though, it was still kind of crazy because even going from Phnom Penh, I went to Kampot, which is a small river community. I lived there for like 5 months in a hut. And then I went to Siem Reap, where I basically spent almost a year living in Siem Reap. And so almost a year and a half in Cambodia during COVID. And the experience was one that I will never, ever forget. It's one of the reasons why I always wear this red shirt everywhere I go pretty much. And it's pretty much the whole reason why is because, I got this shirt on the islands in Cambodia, and yeah, it always kind of brings me back to kind of where this whole real digital nomad journey really began for me. Because really before that, I was kind of more of a backpacker with not a lot of money. And even now, it's not like I say I have a lot of money, but now I'm in apartments. Now I'm staying mostly in Airbnbs. I'm able to travel around, and I can work with people anywhere as long as I have Wi-Fi, most likely a decent Wi-Fi connection. And from there, it's kind of grown, So per week, I have people and I have appointments. And, for me personally, COVID has obviously been for so many people heartbreaking. Some people have lost their lives due to COVID. I've lost a few friends from COVID. For me personally, though, it ended up becoming kind of a blessing in disguise, especially with being stuck in Cambodia. I don't know if I was stuck in Cambodia, if things would have been different with me being in Vietnam. But either way, it happened the way it happened. I would have never ever dreamed that it would have happened this way. And I think going back to me leaving the US and living this lifestyle, I think when you believe enough and you really believe in yourself, because I also went through a lot of fear during that time in 2018 and making the decision to leave the US. I reflected back a lot of that, knowing that it does work out. It does maybe the plan isn't all there, but I think if you just go out there and just do it, it will kind of work itself out, especially if you believe 100% in what the lifestyle is that you want to live. I mean, for me personally, back when I was running out of money in Costa Rica, it could have been very easy for me just to be like, well, I tried, time to go back to the US. I'm out of money now. But even when I was out of money, it was never even an option for me. For me, going back to the US, no, I wasn't ready to go back. I'm still not ready to go back. And it was always like, no, this is it. It's either do or die. I'm either going, this is either going to happen or it's not. And that's why I decided to, take that loan from my friend and fly to Asia and kind of pursue this whole thing of being not only an expat, but what eventually would be kind of a digital nomad. So I guess the whole point of this video really is whatever your dream is out there, whatever you're trying to do, whatever life goals, I don't know, accomplishments you want to do, you can do it. It is possible, assuming you don't want to be like an Olympian cross track, I don't know, like world's fastest man or something like that. I mean, unless you do and you got the skills to do it, then amazing. But you know what I mean, right? Like at the end of the day, whatever your dream is, the thing that you really want to live, how you want to live your life, which you are capable of deep down, you are able and capable of doing so. Anyways, guys, I hope you guys got a lot out of this video. If you stayed till the end, thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing day.